Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here again, digging into the sources that shape our understanding. Today, we're tackling a big one, looking back 25 years at a book that honestly sent shockwaves when it came out in 1999. Art Bell and Whitley Strieber's The Coming Global Superstorm. And this wasn't your standard climate report. It was, well, apocalyptic. It described this sudden civilization-ending climate shift. Most of us think of global warming as this slow burn, right? Something creeping up over decades. But this book, it talked about a switch flipping instantly, sending us from warming into a new ice age, like within weeks. Yeah. So that's our mission today. Here in 2025, we're asking, how do those incredibly dramatic predictions hold up? Did the superstorm hit? Did we dodge a bullet? Or was the warning itself maybe off target?
It's such a unique book, the way it presents everything. It talks about this natural cycle of extreme climate change, sure, but one that's massively sped up by us, by human activity, and it all leads to this climax, the superstorm, and boom, a new ice age. The way it's written, too, it's this mix of scientific claims, ancient myths, geology, and even this almost novelistic, fictionalized blow-by-blow of the disaster hitting. Very urgent stuff.
Yeah, and this key idea they kept coming back to was the critical mass switch.
Exactly, like a tipping point.
Right, where the whole system doesn't just bend, it snaps. It flips into a totally different state almost overnight. An instant reset.
And they said it would happen immediately.
So let's go right there to the moment the book says the switch flips. Let's rewind to 99 and how they describe the disaster starting. It kicks off with this really chilling, almost subtle detail. The earliest warning sign, they called it. Buoy 44 Eurolon out in the North Atlantic. Apparently, its water temperature just plummeted overnight from 48.1 Fahrenheit down to 36.3. I mean, imagine seeing that on your weather feed, right? A drop like that, instantly, you'd assume it was broken.
You definitely would. And the National Data Buoy Center did just list it as malfunctioning. But the book insisted, no, this is it. This is the first domino.
And then, just days later, another buoy malfunction, this time way down south, near Antarctica.
Same story. The book argues these weren't errors, they were the real deal, the first signs.
And from there, it escalates incredibly fast, within weeks, according to the book. Like New York City hitting 91 degrees Fahrenheit in February. Record warmth.
Well, at the same time, this weird southerly airflow makes the southern U.S. coast feel like summer.
But completely the opposite elsewhere. Snow in New Zealand's mountains, Auckland freezing with record cold. It's like the planet's weather system is just tearing itself apart.
Exactly. Contradictory chaos.
And then it gets even wilder globally. They predicted this monster storm over the Russian Arctic, a tornado came, a kind of hybrid tornado hurricane thing, with 165-mile-per-hour winds.
Just appearing out of nowhere. And at the same time, a massive super typhoon, Max, spinning up in hours in the Pacific. Category 4 or 5 winds over 200 miles per hour, heading for the Philippines, Japan.
Plus huge storm systems over the North Pole. Cities like Paris, London, Toronto getting slammed with high winds and weird temperature rises.
And, oh yeah, a supertanker about to break up off Newfoundland, causing the biggest oil spill ever. It's just everything everywhere all at once, total system collapse.
So what was the science or the mechanism they proposed for why all this would suddenly happen?
The core idea was the collapse of the North Atlantic current. You know, that big ocean current that carries warm water north?
Right, the Gulf Stream and its extensions.
Exactly. They argued that melting ice, pouring fresh water into the North Atlantic, would dilute the saltiness and basically shut down that pump, stop the warm water flowing north. And that flip, that shutdown, is the critical mass switch. No more heat transport to the Arctic.
And it wasn't just the ocean currents, was it? Something about the atmosphere, too.
Right. They also talked about greenhouse gases trapping heat near the surface, which makes the upper atmosphere, the stratosphere, colder. So you get this much bigger temperature difference between the ground and way up high. And the bigger that difference, the more violent the weather gets as the atmosphere tries to balance things out. Hence these unprecedented storms.
Leading to, well, chaos. Mass migration south, basically.
Total disorganization, yeah. Northern areas just become instantly uninhabitable, according to the book.
In the aftermath. I mean, the picture they painted for places we know, like the Midwest or Europe, it was brutal, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely devastating. They literally predicted the entire American Midwest, Siberia, Northern Europe buried under ice.
Like how much ice?
10 feet thick at the Canadian border, 40 feet thick up in the tundra. Just gone. Covered.
Wow.
Western civilization. Passed into history, they said. Maybe half the population of the UK dead. Paris fighting off constant blizzards, these terrifying ultra-cold microbursts that freeze things solid instantly.
It's pure disaster movie stuff, but presented as imminent reality.
A complete instant ice age, a planetary reset, swift and savage.
Okay, so that's the terrifying prediction. But the book didn't stop there, did it? It tried to find echoes of this in the past, in myths and geology.
Exactly. It wasn't just a future forecast. It was framed as part of a recurring pattern. They used this analogy of the Earth's climate being like a rubber band stretching and stretching with stress, then suddenly snapping back.
And they argued we'd seen this before.
Yeah, they pointed to geological stuff, like a 900-year cooling trend that they said suddenly reversed in the 50 years before 1999, leading to this ferocious warming. And they talked about the last 3 million years, how the climate flipped repeatedly between warm periods and ice ages. The classic example they used was the mammoths found frozen solid around 8,000 BC.
Oh, right, the ones with food still in their mouths.
Exactly, frozen mid-chew, basically, during what seemed like summer grazing. For the authors, that was proof. These shifts could be instantaneous, not gradual over centuries, catastrophic.
They even got into bigger cosmic ideas, didn't they? Life on Earth, extinctions.
Briefly, yeah, sort of suggesting these periodic catastrophes, these extinctions, might even drive evolution forward, producing better animals. It's this grand cyclical view of destruction and rebirth.
Which kind of leads into this really wild part about lost civilizations and the zodiac. This is where it gets pretty speculative.
Definitely enters a different realm there. The book posits this idea of an advanced civilization before ours, wiped out by a previous superstorm.
And the evidence they cited?
Things like the Sphinx in Egypt. They highlighted arguments about water erosion, suggesting it's much older than the standard date, maybe over 10,000 years old, from a time when Egypt was wetter.
Okay.
And the underwater structure off Yonaguni in Japan, again, maybe 10,000 years old, looking like roads or buildings. Nan Model in Micronesia, built with massive basalt logs, unexplained underwater tunnels.
Al Baalbek.
Right, in Lebanon. That platform with stones so huge it seems impossible they were moved with ancient tech. The common thread, the book argued, was massive and fantastically well-engineered structures left by this lost civilization.
And somehow this connects to the zodiac, astrology.
Well, not astrology, like horoscopes. They presented the zodiac as a kind of ancient clock, a long count stellar calendar tracking the Earth's wobble, the precession of the equinoxes, which takes about 24,000 years.
Right.
The idea was that the constellations, which seem kind of arbitrary, were actually a mnemonic device, a way to remember these cycles of catastrophe linked to the Earth's position in that long cycle.
Huh. So how did they link specific ages, like Leo or Pisces, to the superstorm idea?
They traced human history through these ages. Leo, around 10,500 BC, linked to the Sphinx, early myths like Gilgamesh, then Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, each supposedly marking shifts in religion, society, the rise of cities, monotheism. And when the book was written, 1999, they said we were leaving the age of Pisces associated with Christ, Christianity, and entering Aquarius.
The famous age of Aquarius.
Right. But they didn't see it as peace and love. They predicted it as a time of intense search, where humanity's old beliefs, our pond of belief and assurance, would be drained. We'd have to learn to survive in a new, harsher reality mirroring the climate shift.
Wow. Okay. So after laying all that out, the imminent disaster, the ancient warnings, what did the book say we could actually do about it, and why weren't we doing it already, in their view?
It was a bit of a mixed message, really. On one hand, they were almost bullish about human potential. They talked about our supermassive engineering capability.
Like what?
Right.
Building giant mirrors in space, or literally replumbing the planet by digging up parts of Central America to fix ocean currents. They argued we could develop strategies to stave off the disaster.
Right.
But they immediately pivoted to why we weren't acting. They really slammed what they called the propagandists and politicians who had effectively stopped any kind of official level reform.
Who are they pointing fingers at?
Pretty broad targets. Oil and chemical companies, oil-producing nations, religious fundamentalists, American political extremists. A whole coalition, essentially. They accused these groups of pushing the nothing is proven, so we should wait and see all line. Even funding things like that film, the greening of planet Earth, trying to spin CO2 as purely beneficial.
Yeah, it wasn't just outside forces, right? They had a critique of science itself.
It did. They argued science was too fragmented, split into thousands of very narrow specialties.
So no one could see the big picture.
That was the argument. That this specialization meant science struggled to give clear and unambiguous answers on huge questions like climate shifts, leaving plenty of room for debate and inaction.
Do you think that critique still holds water today? In 2025? Has science gotten better at integrating, at seeing that big picture?
That's a really good question. I mean, clean science has become much more integrated since '99. The consensus is obviously far stronger. But the challenge of communicating complex, interconnected systems to policymakers and the public, that's definitely still there. So maybe the specific critique about fragmentation is less true, but the underlying issue of translating complex science into effective action, that probably still resonates.
Interesting. And they also saw a potential positive switch happening in society, too.
Yeah, sort of a parallel idea. Just as the environment might hit a negative tipping point, they suggested human society might be reaching a positive one, leading to rapid change, like the fall of the USSR or environmental cleanups they saw happening then. Society's own critical mass switch.
And what about us, individuals? What did they tell people reading the book back then that they could do?
It boiled down to personal responsibility, trying to buy us some time. Pretty practical stuff for 1999, actually. Things like sealing up your house, insulating your water heater, setting your thermostat carefully, 68 or lower in winter, 74 or higher in summer.
And driving habits?
Big focus there. Buy energy-efficient cars. They specifically mentioned the Toyota Prius, which was brand new then, and ditch the mega polluter SUVs. Small actions, they argued, but if enough people did them, it could make a difference, delay the inevitable.
Okay, so that was the picture in 1999. The warning, the history, the potential solutions, the call to action. Now, let's bring it home. Fast forward to right now, 2025. The book talked about weeks, a few years. It's been over 25 years. Time for the reality check.
Right, and this is where the book's specific predictions really diverge from what's actually happened. When you look at the events it described unfolding rapidly from 1999, well, they just haven't occurred. That sudden, drastic temperature drop from the Georgia's bank buoy, the 91-degree February in New York, that tornado came over the Arctic, Super Typhoon Max wiping out coastlines. None of it happened in that abrupt, catastrophic, globally synchronized way.
So no sudden ice sheets covering the Midwest or Europe?
No. Thankfully, no. The mass migration south, the instant freezing, the complete collapse of Northern Hemisphere civilization within years of 1999, that specific scenario did not play out.
What about the Arctic ice prediction? They were pretty specific about that timeline too, weren't they?
Very specific. They quoted scientists from March 1999 suggesting the Arctic could be open ocean in summer within a very few years and lose as much as 70% of its ice mass within another 25 years.
So by 2024-ish.
Exactly. And while Arctic sea ice has declined significantly and worryingly since 1999, and we do see more open water in summer, it hasn't hit that 70% loss mark from the 1999 baseline within that 25-year window. And crucially, it hasn't collapsed to the point of being open ocean in the way the book suggested was necessary to trigger their specific superstorm mechanism. The rapid, total meltdown they envisioned by now just didn't happen on that timescale.
Okay, so this really highlights a crucial distinction, doesn't it? The difference between the general warnings about climate change, which are obviously very real and we see the impacts,
Absolutely.
versus this very specific, incredibly rapid superstorm leading to an instant ice age scenario.
Precisely. The book definitely tapped into real concerns about global warming, greenhouse gases, melting ice, and the potential for more extreme weather things science confirms are happening. But it packaged those real concerns into this unique, hyperdramatic, sudden onset catastrophe scenario that simply hasn't manifested by 2025.
Although that critique they had back then about the wait-and-see approach, the false debate stopping action,
Yeah.
you could argue that part of their warning still holds true, couldn't you? Even if the superstorm didn't hit, maybe the debate and delay tactics they described have hindered broader climate action over the last 25 years.
That's a very fair point. The specific disaster didn't happen, but the societal inertia and the pushback against action that the book described, that dynamic feels familiar, unfortunately. The underlying concern about delaying action remains highly relevant.
And it's worth remembering how they told the story, too. That mix of science and, well, fictionalized disaster narrative.
Right, it wasn't just data, it was vivid scenes, the buoy, the New York heat wave presented almost as if they were happening, blurring prediction and reality. Hugely effective storytelling, even if the timeline was off.
So the superstorm itself didn't arrive by 2025.
No. But the book's legacy,
Look,
it's complicated, isn't it? It was wrong on the specifics and the timing, drastically so. Yet it did spotlight, in a very dramatic way, the potential vulnerability of our systems and the possibility of rapid, nonlinear change. Even an inaccurate warning can sometimes force us to think about risks we'd rather ignore.
Which leads to a final thought, maybe. The book strangely ends on a note of hope.
It suggests humanity can cross this cliff's edge, that we have the power to re-engineer things to make that massive worldwide and heartfelt effort to survive. So here we are in 2025. The superstorm didn't happen as predicted. Does that make us more likely, or maybe less likely, to make that kind of massive effort the book called for? What lessons do you take away when a dire warning like this doesn't come true literally, but the underlying problems it pointed to, climate stability, societal action, are still very much with us? It definitely leaves you with something to think about regarding our choices now and going forward.